A full-size digital scan of the Titanic has revealed crucial information about the ship's final moments.
For over a century, her name has echoed through history, a chilling synonym for unimaginable tragedy. The RMS Titanic. We all think we know the story. The unsinkable ship, the fatal iceberg, the frantic lifeboats, the band playing on, and the final plunge into the icy blackness. A narrative seemingly settled, etched into our collective memory by countless books, documentaries, and Hollywood dramatizations. But what if, after more than 100 years, this ingrained story was fundamentally incomplete? What if the crushing, silent depths of the North Atlantic held secrets so profound, so utterly transformative that they didn't just fill in a few blanks, but completely rewrote the very foundation of history's most infamous maritime disaster? Brace yourself, because a new unprecedented discovery has surfaced, one that defies every assumption and challenges everything we thought we knew. We're not talking about grainy sonar images, salvaged relics, or fading survivor testimonies anymore. We're talking about a digital ghost, a full-size, photorealistic twin of the Titanic, meticulously unveiled from its eternal resting place thanks to cutting-edge technology. And what this digital resurrection reveals will absolutely, irrevocably change the way you see that fateful night forever. The ocean, it seems, has finally given up its deepest, most shocking secrets. Imagine yourself at a staggering depth of 3,800 meters, nearly 2.5 miles beneath the churning surface of the Atlantic Ocean. Here, in the black, pressurized abyss where sunlight has never and will never reach, lies the final silent graveyard of the RMS Titanic. For decades, the wreck stood as both a monument and an impenetrable mystery, a ghost ship frozen in time, its story told only through the blurry lens of primitive sonar and the often fragmented memories of those who survived. But in early 2025, that silence was shattered in the most extraordinary way imaginable. A pioneering expedition launched jointly by deep-sea imaging specialists, Atlantic Productions, and National Geographic embarked on an undertaking that changed the very paradigm of deep-sea exploration. They employed a technique never before used at this scale: deep photogrammetry. Picture this: a fleet of remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, meticulously navigating the pitch-black ocean floor, capturing over 700,000 ultra-detailed high-resolution images. Every conceivable angle was covered, every twisted beam, every scattered artifact, every inch of the decaying hull captured with breathtaking precision. Engineers then stitched these hundreds of thousands of images together, transforming them into a complete photorealistic three-dimensional scan of the entire Titanic wreck site. This isn't just a handful of new photographs. It's an astronomical 16 terabytes of visual data, forming what one lead researcher reverently described as the most comprehensive archaeological model ever made of a shipwreck. The sheer scale of this achievement is mind-boggling. It's so incredibly detailed that analysts can now virtually zoom in to examine individual rivets that held the colossal plates together, discern faded patterns on personal belongings scattered across the debris field, and even read long-forgotten cargo labels still clinging to their contents. For the very first time, historians and marine forensic experts aren't just studying fragments. They can virtually explore the entire wreck site, walking through a tragedy frozen in time. Unlike previous explorations that focused on isolated sections, this scan mapped everything from the eerily intact bow section, still standing upright on the seabed as if continuing its voyage, to the horribly mangled stern lying 600 meters away, a twisted lattice of metal as if torn apart by some monstrous force. It's truly like uncovering a crime scene where all the evidence had been perfectly preserved, but no one had been able to look at it clearly until now. This unparalleled view wasn't just about seeing more. It was about understanding who truly fought to save the ship and what ultimate sacrifice they made. For decades, the dramatic narrative of the Titanic's demise has focused almost exclusively on the upper decks. The frantic rush for lifeboats, the haunting music from the band, playing on the freezing chaos as the mighty ship slipped beneath the waves. But the most compelling and perhaps most shocking revelations from this groundbreaking 2025 scan lie far below the surface, deep within the ship's very heart, where a group of unsung heroes made their final defiant stand. Within the boiler rooms and engine compartments, space is long hidden from modern eyes and rarely depicted in popular culture. The scan uncovered irrefutable physical evidence of a desperate, almost unimaginable fight to keep the ship alive. Take, for instance, boiler room number 2. The metal grates that once held red-hot coal are visibly concave, bent inwards by intense heat and pressure. This distortion tells a profound, chilling story. The boilers were still operational, still lit, still roaring with infernal energy, even as frigid water surged relentlessly into the lower decks. Imagine the scene: the rising water, the steam, the roaring furnaces. Even more telling is a manual steam control valve found on the Titanic's mangled stern. This stern section, long dismissed as too violently severed and distorted to yield much clarity, held a pivotal clue. The valve, which regulated the flow of steam used to power the ship's generators, was found locked in the wide open position. To modern marine engineers, this is not just a technical detail, it's a seismic discovery. It proves that steam was still circulating, electricity was still being generated, and crucially, the Titanic's lights, those very symbols of civilization, of order amid escalating disaster, remained on. This physical evidence directly validates numerous eyewitness accounts from survivors who recalled the lights staying on, flickering until just moments before the final plunge, a detail often dismissed as trauma-induced memory. Historians now believe this was no accident, no mere mechanical anomaly, but a calculated, deliberate, and undeniably heroic act. We know from the inquiry into the Titanic disaster that more than 30 engineers, firemen, and trimmers remained below decks. Many likely knew they would never escape, yet they stayed, tirelessly working to keep the pumps running and the power alive. They succeeded, buying precious minutes that enabled more passengers to reach lifeboats in the pitch-black Atlantic night, potentially saving hundreds of lives. These weren't just mechanics, they were guardians of hope, sacrificing themselves in total darkness so others might see. Their bravery, long assumed but seldom proven with tangible evidence, now has ironclad validation, etched into the twisted steel itself. The fact that the generators were producing power until the final minutes completely recontextualizes the disaster, revealing a final act of self-sacrifice that prevented hundreds of people from dying in total darkness. Yet, even with such profound heroism, the ship was doomed, not by a single catastrophic blow, but by a far more insidious, almost imperceptible force. For decades, popular culture has dramatized the iceberg tearing a colossal, gaping wound into the Titanic's hull, a dramatic, explosive breach. The new data, however, exposes a startlingly different truth, revealing a far more precise surgical strike. The 2025 scans confirmed that the iceberg did not create one massive gash. Instead, the impact created a series of thin slits and overlapping tears along the starboard side, each no wider than a human hand, perhaps only a few millimeters in width, but stretching along nearly 300 feet of the colossal hull. This validates a long-held but often overlooked theory. The iceberg acted more like a scalpel, peeling back seams, rather than a blunt hammer. Naval engineers digitally reconstructed the damage based on this unprecedented data, and what they found was utterly chilling. 6 of the ship's forward watertight compartments were compromised, not the 4 it was famously designed to withstand. That number, 6, was the precise tipping point at which Titanic's meticulously calculated buoyancy equations utterly collapsed. The difference between survival and utter disaster wasn't a 10-foot wide gash, it was a series of barely visible seams, each no wider than a credit card, spanning too many watertight divisions. It was the slow, almost imperceptible seepage of water, methodically pooling and rising, cascading over bulkheads that weren't sealed to the very top deck, that doomed her, like a surgical incision that bled the ship dry, compartment by compartment. Heartbeat by heartbeat, the water conquered the vessel. More astonishing still, the new simulation models suggest a truly heartbreaking what-if scenario, had the iceberg struck just a few feet further aft or even slightly shallower, altering the precise sequence of compartment breaches. The outcome might have been entirely different. The watertight doors could have held, the stern might have remained afloat long enough for rescue, and the Titanic could have become a cautionary tale about incredibly close calls instead of the benchmark for disaster. Dr. Helen Faber, a marine architect deeply involved in the project, put it eloquently. People always ask how something so big could fail so catastrophically. But the Titanic didn't fail because it was weak. It failed because it was too precise, too engineered, too unforgiving. There was no margin for the kind of tear it suffered. This revelation has reopened long-standing questions about Titanic's construction. Was the steel too brittle in the frigid water? Were the rivets flawed? Or was the ship simply tragically unlucky in the way that only nature, indifferent and exacting, can deliver its blows? In the end, the Titanic didn't explode. It didn't shatter. It bled to death quietly and methodically, along seams too thin to be seen by the naked eye, a testament to the fact that it took so little to end so much. Yet even as the ship slowly bled, its final moments above the surface were far more violent and complex than anyone could have possibly imagined. For decades, the moment of the Titanic's final break has been hotly debated. Survivors described hearing a great cracking sound, a roar like thunder, or being jolted as if the ship had snapped cleanly in two. Without eyes on the ocean floor, all we had were conflicting guesses and Hollywood dramatizations, each offering their own interpretation. But the new 3D scan answers that question with haunting, undeniable clarity, and the truth is far more brutal and revealing than previously believed. The stern section, long dismissed as too damaged and distorted to reveal much, now lies at the very center of a complex mechanical puzzle. The scan exposes a distinct pattern of torsional stress, a terrifying corkscrewing effect along the ship's keel and lower decks. This violent twisting simply couldn't have happened unless the ship's rear section twisted furiously as the bow submerged and the stern lifted high into the air. This directly confirms what only a few survivors described. As the bow sank, drawing the immense vessel down, the stern rose nearly vertical, placing colossal, unfathomable strain on the ship's central structure. Dr. Emily Kenson, a marine forensic expert brought in to interpret this groundbreaking new data, described the moment of failure with chilling precision. The hull bent like a bowstring pulled too far. The keel fractured first, then the upper decks peeled apart. It didn't just break, it tore itself open under its own weight. Unlike earlier theories that suggested a clean, instantaneous snap, the new scan shows a progressive, agonizing failure, a gradual dismemberment that took place over agonizing seconds. The ship's structural supports began to shear at slightly different times and angles, creating a horrific sequence of failures. You can trace this devastating sequence in the way the deck plating folded like paper, how the gangways collapsed like accordion bellows, and where huge steel beams bent and froze in mid-torque. This entire process, from the first twist to the final separation, would have taken roughly 20 to 40 seconds. During this horrifying window, the rear section of the Titanic essentially twisted itself free from the collapsing bow, raining debris onto the seabed far below. When the stern finally plunged, it did so in a chaotic, uncontrolled spin, explaining why it now lies in such a contorted heap with decks collapsed inward and machinery spewed across the ocean floor like the aftermath of a mechanical autopsy. But even here, amid this unparalleled devastation, new truths emerge. Deep within the twisted remains, the scan revealed startling personal artifacts, including what appears to be a collapsed bunk room, luggage still clumped together in the final moments, and even the remnants of a staircase railing, frozen mid-fall. This profoundly suggests that many crew members were still within the stern section when it tore away, unable to escape, or perhaps unwilling to abandon their posts until the very last second. "We're not just seeing metal," said one analyst. Reviewing the debris field, we're seeing moments, the exact second when physics and humanity collided. The Titanic didn't just snap, it fought itself apart with every beam, every bolt, and every body resisting until resistance was no longer possible. And the wreck now lies as proof, not just of the violence, but of the long, slow, agonizing unraveling of a dream declared unsinkable. This new understanding of its end raises an even more provocative question. Could the very design elements meant to save the Titanic have inadvertently sealed its fate? This is perhaps the most shocking and counterintuitive new theory to emerge from the 2025 analysis, that the ship tore itself apart precisely because it flooded slowly. Paradoxically, the slow ingress of water, rather than a sudden, overwhelming rush, created a unique and devastating type of strain. It was enough to stress the structure to its absolute breaking point, but not enough to allow for full compression and sinking as a single, intact unit. The result was a delayed death spiral, with immense pressure building unevenly, pulling the hull in opposing directions until it literally ripped itself apart. Structural engineer Liam Durant, who worked extensively on the simulation, articulated this horrifying internal conflict. The ship was fighting itself. The bow wanted to dive, the stern wanted to float. The forces met in the middle, and something had to give. Even more intriguing is the theory that Titanic's designers, in their pursuit of ultimate safety, may have unintentionally created the very conditions for its catastrophic destruction. Consider the ship's double bottom, hailed as a groundbreaking safety measure. During flooding, this design might have inadvertently redirected pressure upwards into the hull, hastening the breakup rather rather than preventing it. Similarly, the watertight compartments, which famously ended short of the main deck, may have created trapped air pockets that amplified internal tension instead of relieving it as water rose. There's even growing speculation that the final violent fracture occurred after the lights went out, and that the tremendous noise survivors described wasn't just metal failing under stress. Instead, it was the ship's central spine disintegrating under the crushing weight of millions of gallons of internal water, the sound amplified by the trapped air. As one historian chillingly put it, this wasn't just a shipwreck, it was a structural self-destruction, a mechanical unraveling triggered by hubris, by speed, and by nature's relentless arithmetic. For all the reverence and study the Titanic has received over the past century, we are only now, in 2025, truly understanding how she died. Not as a singular event, but as a perfect storm of minor flaws and final gasps that, against all odds, devastatingly aligned. Every twisted beam, every scattered piece of debris across the ocean floor now tells a precise, chilling, and coherent story. Until now, the Titanic's debris field was understood only in rough sketches, a collection of scattered artifacts, twisted beams, and detached hull pieces, documented piecemeal by various expeditions. But there was no single, coherent map, no unified, three-dimensional picture of how the pieces landed or what forces shaped their final resting place. That has fundamentally changed. Thanks to the over 700,000 high-resolution images captured by deep-sea submersibles and meticulously stitched into a full-scale digital replica, we now possess the first truly complete three-dimensional map of the Titanic's resting place. The results are not just stunning, they are revolutionary. From a forensic standpoint, the layout of the wreck and the debris field tells a captivating story of massive hydrodynamic violence, followed by a precise, almost choreographed collapse. The bow section, incredibly well preserved, still lies pointed almost due north, standing majestically upright as if in eternal pursuit of the voyage it never finished. It rests embedded in the ocean floor, a testament to a relatively soft impact. But the stern, located a full 600 meters away, is a horrific, twisted, ruptured mass of collapsed decks, machinery, and shredded hull plating, its impact far more violent, and between them lies a sprawling trail of devastation, a linear corridor, littered with over 5,000 individual pieces, ranging from broken bathtubs and grand chandeliers to coal bins, luggage trunks, and even shattered lifeboat remnants. This debris corridor is no random scattering, it's a precise timeline. It visually demonstrates where the Titanic broke, how far each section was pulled during its descent, and what forces acted upon them. Marine archaeologists now believe that the stern's extraordinarily contorted state is the crucial key to understanding the ship's breakup. It rotated violently as it descended, possibly due to immense air pockets trapped in its rear compartments, causing the stern to hit the seabed at a far greater velocity than the bow. The bow's relative intactness, on the other hand, supports the theory that it descended more gracefully, dragged downward in a slower, almost vertical plunge, evident in the soft impact trench it created. And then there's the enduring mystery of the missing pieces. Several crucial sections, especially from the ship's midsection where the catastrophic break occurred, are simply gone, seemingly vaporized, disintegrated under the immense pressure, or buried so deeply in sediment that they've eluded detection for decades. Researchers believe the new 3D model could finally help pinpoint those elusive missing parts, potentially unlocking new, definitive evidence about how the fracture began and what internal failures may have triggered it. This includes critical components like the ship's central turbine shaft, key keel braces, and even the very Marconi room from which the desperate SOS was broadcast. If located, these sections could provide the most definitive evidence of Titanic's last mechanical moments, what worked, what failed, and who was tragically there to witness it. This wreckage map also serves another, more poetic purpose. It reveals the final sprawl of history, a frozen instant in time when humanity's greatest vessel surrendered to the deep. Every twist of metal, every displaced beam, every shattered relic now reads like a powerful, long-lost paragraph in a manuscript just waiting to be interpreted. After over a century of assumptions, speculation, and fragmented truths, the final chapter of the Titanic's epic, tragic saga is now being rewritten before our very eyes. We've unearthed the profound, unparalleled bravery of the engineers who held the line until the last possible second, ensuring the light stayed on and a flicker of hope persisted amid the growing darkness. We've unmasked the chilling, precise Truth of the iceberg strike. A surgical, paper-thin catastrophe of meticulous design flaws meeting nature's indifference. Not a brute force impact, and we've grappled with the violent, complex self-destruction of a ship that fought itself apart, ironically, perhaps even hastened by the very design meant to ensure its safety. The Titanic didn't explode in a blinding flash. It bled to death quietly and methodically along seams too thin to be seen by the naked eye. It didn't simply shatter, it tore itself into pieces in a wrenching, agonizing final breath. And critically, it didn't die in the dark. It was extinguished in a blaze of defiance, kept alive by heroes until its very last heartbeat. This isn't just about a shipwreck anymore. It's about human decisions in the face of insurmountable doom, about the cold mathematics of disaster, and about the silent language of warped metal that has finally, after a century, begun to speak its full, devastating truth. The story of the Titanic will never be the same. What discovery from this new scan do you find to be the most shocking or impactful? Does it change your perception of the Titanic disaster? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and until next time.